Something interesting about myself I like to share with people is that I used to be homeschooled. Don't worry, I'm not here to induct you into any cult. However, homeschooling is really interesting because everyone knows of the concept, but no one really discusses the truth behind it. In our conversation today, I'd like to delve deep into a topic that has revolutionized education in these recent years. What better way to do this than to tell you my own story? Along with millions of others, I became homeschooled in 2020. Actually, I was under the impression that I was homeschooled, but I was actually put into an online school that provided the standard American school curriculum online and granted me the freedom of creating my own schedule. I obtained absolute control over what I did with my time. And as a middle schooler who had only experienced the traditional schooling system, it took me a while to understand what I was supposed to do with this power. My parents were definitely into the concept of homeschooling, and why wouldn't they be? To the average person, it guides students to an approach to education that's more flexible, personalized, and accessible. For me, homeschooling meant a world of limitless possibilities where students were not confined by the walls of a classroom. It was meant to be a liberating experience where they're not constrained by certain curriculums or rules. It offered me an environment where I could choose when and where I studied, fitting education into my life rather than the other way around. It's this flexibility that allowed me to pursue other passions and address what I wanted to without compromising my education. When I was first introduced to the system, I was amazed. The avenues were endless. I could deep dive whatever subject I wanted to. I could study whenever I wanted to. Everything was in my hands. It seemed too perfect. And I'd love to tell you about how I spent my hours productively and found the cure for cancer. However, the truth is, on a good day, I was working a maximum of 2 hours every day, with additional weekends 2 days of the week. By the end of the 10 months, I had work piled up over months of negligence. Not only did this absolutely spike the amount of stress I had immediately before my deadline, but it also impacted the overall quality of my work adversely. When we begin pulling back the layers, there are many things we begin to notice about this problem of procrastination. I realized that traditional schools provide that structured environment with set schedules, deadlines, and teacher supervision. I, as a homeschool child, on the other hand, had more control over my daily life. It's this freedom that led me to procrastination because I didn't know how to manage my time effectively. It's important to note that students fresh out of a traditional system are not equipped to deal with the challenges the homeschooling environment has to offer. The road is extremely rocky at first, but I can assure you that the long term advantages are seriously worth it. Let's face it, the average home environment can be filled with many distractions. For me, it was internet distractions, family activities, and household chores. All of these things are what lured me away from my work and led to procrastination. Without proper check ins and balance, one day can turn into a week, which can turn into a month, which can turn into a year, as it did in my case. At its core, procrastination stems from a lack of self discipline. This is a skill most homeschool children must have because without it, they're definitely more prone to slacking off and falling behind, just as I did. The road to self discipline is actually pretty interesting, especially when we discuss how you can get your kids there. It starts off by having meaningful conversations. When you get to know us, I think we're pretty intelligent people. I've often found that people remain undisciplined when they lack the motivation to commit to a certain activity. Hence, highlighting the key motivations and their why regarding your schoolwork can prove to be beneficial. Next, it's important to set proper goals and ease them into it. We need to remember that habits take due to consistency, not extremity, so we can start off small. Help them create a low hour schedule and hold them accountable to it. Allow them to create their goals for the year and set a schedule as to how to achieve them. Your job here is to augment their learning, not micromanage. Check ins are extremely important. In my case, I definitely wasn't checked in on constantly, and that's exactly what allowed me to fall down that slippery slope. This is why I believe sticking with them every step of the way, tracking their progress, understanding why their progress may be at a halt, is much better than leaving them to deal with it on their own. One of the biggest problems I personally faced was tackling imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is characterized by feelings of self doubt, inadequacy, and the persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud despite evidence of competence and achievement. In my time being homeschooled, I genuinely felt out of place. I spent 3 years without the proper exposure the rest of the world was experiencing on a day to day basis. It felt like, even though I wasn't doing anything wrong, I couldn't truly extract the proper benefits from any experience. This is a concern that a lot of people have, as many argue that homeschooling lacks socialization opportunities. However, this doesn't need to be true. Properly homeschooled children often engage in co op activities, sports, and community events. In my case, I definitely wasn't given access to any of these things, and that's exactly why I want to emphasize the importance of exposure. The purpose is to allow them to think independently and consider things outside of their limited schoolwork box. As a parent, you play a significant role in either worsening or alleviating these feelings. It's your job to foster an environment where self-worth and self-confidence is highly promoted. The key idea is that homeschooling takes a lot of effort, but it's up to anyone to grow into someone who can enjoy the rewards. Homeschooling has so much potential for the betterment of our society and these coming generations. While it empowers individuals to take charge of their learning, it cannot be achieved without a proper balance. Navigating a world of rapid change, we need to understand that the future of education is in our hands. With the proper knowledge and resources, we are capable of building a world where every learner has the opportunity to thrive and where the world of knowledge is boundless.